1. The Bible describes Moses as an eloquent and slow of speech and tongue. But in the movie, he is a courageous and capable communicator. He even gives a rousing speech, as the sea parts reminiscent of Braveheart. 2. The movie also incorrectly says Miriam placed Moses in a basket in the Nile, instead of his mother doing so. 3. Miriam, Moses' sister, is a live-in nanny in Pharaoh's household, who raises both Moses and Pharaoh. This was a strange twist to the storyline, although essential for Scott's presentation. In the Bible, Miriam places Moses in a basket, when he is 3 months old, in some reeds along the bank of the Nile. It is here that, when Pharaoh's daughter finds him, Miriam asks if she should go and get one of the Hebrew women, to nurse the baby for her. When the reply is yes, she then brings Moses' mother to Pharaoh's daughter, to nurse the baby Moses. Moses then returns to his own household, where he is raised by his mother, until Pharaoh's daughter later takes him as her own son and names him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." 4. Moses does not know of his Hebrew origin, and is instead told of it by Nun, father of Joshua. Instead, the Bible is clear that Moses knew he was a Hebrew, and at the age of 40 went to see his own people. 5. In the biblical narrative, Moses kills 2 Egyptians, who was beating a Hebrew slave and hides the corpse in the sand. The movie has Moses killing 2 guards for no reason, and leaves the corpse in the street. 6. In the biblical narrative, Moses flees Egypt when his murderous act becomes known. In the film, he flees when Pharaoh suspicions that he may have been born a Hebrew. 7. In the Bible, Moses sees a burning bush and, when he investigates, God speaks from within the bush. The film opts instead for a scene that depicts God in a somewhat schizophrenic way. Moses wakes from a terrible accident, to see a bush mysteriously on fire, and next Yahweh appears to Moses as a whiny, sullen, petulant, capricious little boy, of about 12 years. The majesty and holiness of the Almighty Creator God of the Bible is completely absent. 8. The emotional scene between Moses and Zipporah, when Moses leaves to be a general, and does not take her and Gershom, his son, with him, strays from the biblical account, in which he does take his wife and sons. 9. There has been much hullabaloo over the film's race problem. That is, there are almost no people of color in the film except in some smaller roles. Instead, we get a cast of white Western actors playing a society of people who would undeniably have had dark skin. Sigourney Weaver, hold your laughter, plays the African queen. 10. There is some extra-biblical mythology that has emerged in some modern retellings of Exodus, in which Moses grows up as Pharaoh's son and the brother of the future Pharaoh. This allows for a sub-narrative of sibling rivalry that spices up the story. But there is little biblical support for such a thing. In actuality, the text says Moses grew up as the son of Pharaoh's daughter or Pharaoh's grandson. The man cast as Moses' brother, the original Pharaoh's son in the film, would likely have been Moses' uncle. Regardless, there is no mention of anything resembling sibling rivalry in the text itself. 11. Moses being a general in Pharaoh's army. 12. Moses only being a shepherd in Midian for 9 years instead of 40. 13. The Bible casts Moses as a messenger, who lets God handle the destruction. The film casts him as something of a violent liberator, that trains the Hebrew slaves to fight like Kevin Costner in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. His people end up burning fields and killing sailors, waging a war of attrition. A scene, where he leads a band of guerrilla fighters, to blow up an Egyptian storehouse, is especially odd. 14. The staff of Moses is not just folklore. It is a prominent part of the biblical narrative. But Moses' iconic staff is absent in the film. Instead, he wields an Egyptian sword, which plays a central role in the sea-parting miracle. 15. Aaron, while sneaking into a few scenes here and there, is virtually non-existent in the film, as opposed to the major role he plays in the biblical narrative. 16. In the Bible, Moses and Aaron announce, or administer each of the plagues before Pharaoh. In the film, Moses has a nighttime encounter with Pharaoh, before the first plague, and offers a vague warning before the last. How do they know that God may be behind it all? A mysterious horse shows up with a message painted on its ribcage. 17. In the Bible narrative, God uses Aaron to transform the Nile by stretching his rod over the waters. In the film, this never happens. Instead, hundreds of crocodiles seem to go insane. In a violent frenzy they kill themselves and others, and their blood turns the Nile red. 18. The film depicts 8 or 9 plagues, depending on what you count. 10 plagues are mentioned in the Bible. 19. In the movie, after being freed from Egyptian slavery, true to biblical form, Pharaoh then decides he has made a mistake. But rather than, as the Bible teaches, wanting to recapture his slave task force, he now wants to kill them all. 20. In the movie, God leaves Moses essentially clueless in regards to what he wants Moses to do. In the biblical account, God gives Moses explicitly clear instructions in Exodus chapter 3 verse 1 through chapter 4 verse 18. 21. In the movie, during the Exodus, Moses does not know which way to go. In the biblical account, God leads the Hebrews with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. I have no idea why the director's producers made it appear that God was vague in his instructions to Moses, when the biblical account says the exact opposite. 22. In the Bible, God says that victory will be obtained through Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen being destroyed in the sea. After the miracle, the text says that not one of the Egyptians survived. But in the film, Pharaoh somehow survives the crushing weight of the water wall. Who knows, maybe Scott is setting us up for an epic extra-biblical sequel. 23. The Bible never says, and the film sticks with the common though, in the opinion of many, erroneous view, that it was Ramses the Great. 24. We see the God character directing movie Moses in a Mount Sinai cave, to chisel the 10 Commandments on tablets of stone. The dialogue does point out that the law comes from God, not man. Scripture is clear, that God himself not only inspired the 10 Commandments, but actually wrote them on both sets of tablets. The first set that he presented to Moses on the mountain, and the second set that Moses cut out after he broke the first ones upon seeing the golden calf being worshipped in the camp. Did I miss any? If so, add them below in the comment section.